So fellas, we've just come off a UFC 322 massive night for Islam Makhachev winning a belt in a second weight class, and an even bigger night for the whole of the welterweight division. So with that being said, these are the fights to make after UFC 322. Every prelim winner, every winner or loser on the main card, and again, like I said, this is going to be a big card for 170 as well, because 3 top fights at 170, just a bunch of big moments throughout the entire card as well. Some might say the best card of the year. I know the main and the common event kind of slanted that a little bit, but overall, I'd say it was a pretty solid fight card, one of the best on paper, and we're going there with the first prelim winner. Mateusz Camilo beat Slavaclaus opening up the prelims. I mean, I don't really see Mateusz Camilo going too far. I think he's going to be one of these guys that could be cut from the UFC within a year from now. He's good enough to stay in the UFC. Doesn't look massively impressive. I'm going to put him in there with Ismail Bonfim. Ismail Bonfim was once one of the better prospects at 155. I remember when he knocked out Terrence McKinney in his debut, and people talking about him as if he was going to be like the next big thing in the lightweight division. And he's had a horrible past couple of performances. He got brutalized by Benoit Saint Denis. I think he picked up a win after that, and then he got destroyed by Sadikov in a round, and he's just been finished by Chris Padilla as well. He's in a very bad career spot, so the fact that he's on a losing streak, I'd put him in there with Mateusz Camilo. Two guys who are pretty, not low level necessarily, but definitely don't have really too much momentum at 155. Low level, I guess, 155 pound matchup. Camilo, Bonfim, step up for Camilo. If he can beat Bonfim, that's good for Camilo. We might be able to pick up some momentum, and maybe we're judging him too harshly after his UFC debut loss. And if Bonfim can beat Camilo, he's back in the winning column. Maybe he can pick up some momentum. So pretty low level fight. I'd say they're fairly evenly matched. Camilo, Bonfim, get that done. And then for Baisanko Susakayev, 11-0 with, I think, 90% of his wins by finish. Or I think every single one of his wins might be by finish as well, apart from maybe one of them. Knocked out Eric McConaughey. I want to see Susakayev versus Torres Finney. I just want to see Torres Finney fight. I want to see him get fucking brutalized, man. He's been out for so long, but I kind of want to see this fight for multitude of reasons. First of all, 11-0 versus 11-0. Two guys who are 11-0, undefeated in the middleweight division. It's a fight that at least I want to see. I mean, we almost saw Azamat Bekaev versus Torres Finney. I almost feel like this is a better version of that fight. You've got this guy who's knocking everybody out, a guy who's super dangerous in Susakayev, potentially the next big thing in the middleweight division. Just knocked out McConaughey, got a submission in his debut, and then you've got Torres Finney, 5'9". I think he's like 5'8" actually for the middleweight division, tiny for the middleweight division, who smudges people against the cage. A lot of people have a lot of people probably have a hit list on Torres Finney, have a hit on his name. So Susakayev versus Finney. I think this is a great fight to build Susakayev. If he can go out there and brutalize Torres Finney, I'm sure the UFC are going to be happy. And to be fair to him, it is a step up in competition. There's no need to rush this guy. You know, he's got 2 finishes in the UFC so far against low-level guys. He's not blowing through them. Like I said, the first 2 rounds of that fight with McConaughey were fairly competitive. I think Torres Finney's a fairly good step up. He's undefeated. He's 11-0. He won in the Contender Series 3 times and won his debut. Not a lot of people really wanted to see him win. He's a challenging grappler. So I do Susakayev versus Finney. If Finney wins, he's going to be like the new Bilal Muhammad. Not that, I'm not trying to compare him to Bilal Muhammad in the sense that, you know, I'm not going to, that seems a bit disrespectful to Bilal Muhammad, but in the sense that he's a guy on the rise that nobody wants to see go on the rise. And then if Susakayev wins, then he's just shut down one of the worst up-and-comers in the middleweight division. The UFC is going to be happy, the fans are going to be happy, and it gives Susakayev some momentum. So I'd put him in there with Torres Finney, let him knock out Torres Finney, and if he doesn't, it really shows us that Susakayev's overrated. But I feel like this should be a fairly winnable fight for Susakayev. I guess it's a big win because he's beaten an 11-0 undefeated Torres Finney. Fairly big name as well if we're talking unranked in the middleweight division. So Susakayev, Torres Finney, get it done. And then for Fatima Klein, one of the better up-and-coming women in the entirety of the UFC, gets through Angela Hill. I do Fatima Klein versus Jessica Andrade. I think this is a fairly good step up for Fatima Klein. She lost her debut to Judah Vicious, which there's no shame in losing to her. Since then, she's been on a 3-fight winning streak, 2 finishes, and like I said, just beat Angela Hill. She's going to be in the top 15. It's going to be someone in the top 10x, I think, considering that Andrade is on a 3-fight losing streak, lost to Natalia Silva, submitted by Jasmine Judah Vicious, and just lost to Lupi Godinez at 3:19. I think she needs a bit of a step down in competition, so I think it's the perfect fight to build Fatima Klein, and I think it's also very winnable for Fatima Klein too. I don't really see a way where Andrade wins this fight. I think if the fight stays standing, the sheer volume of Fatima Klein on the feet is probably going to cruise her to a decision, but I can even see her getting a submission. Jessica Andrade, her biggest kryptonite does seem to be grapplers. Fatima Klein's a great grappler, trains with Erin Blankfield, so I could see Fatima Klein taking her down and getting the sub. So I do Fatima Klein versus Andrade, winnable fight, former champion, gets her in the top 10, and if she can go out there and finish Andrade, it's probably going to be someone in the top 5 next for Fatima Klein. So I think it's the perfect step up. Andrade needs to fight down. She's on a 3-fight losing streak. She needs to be nowhere near the top 5. Klein, Andrade, get it done. And then for Kyle Daukaus, kind of hit a second win in his UFC career. I'd give him Kelvin Gastelum. I think this is kind of like a good fight for like a top 15 eliminator, where the winner of this fight get someone in the top 15. But like I said, Kyle Daukaus, he's had a great run to his UFC career on his new run. You know, he knocked out Michel Pereira, the striker, in about a minute, and he's now got out there and submitted the grappler in Gerald Mearshot in less than a minute as well. So he's got some momentum to his name. Kelvin Gastelum's a bit of a win-loss fighter. He's coming off a good win over Dustin Stoltzfus, but he did miss weight even at the middleweight division, so I don't think the UFC are going to push Gastelum that much. So I think it's just a perfect top 15 eliminator. It's a step up for Daukaus in my opinion. Gastelum is the toughest guy I would have had to face so far, and he's coming off a win. It's still not an easy fight for Gastelum because he's having to face Kyle Daukaus, who in MMA is on like a 6-fight winning streak with all of them by finish. So it's a fairly even fight. You've got the guy who's super tough in Gastelum versus the guy who seems to be super dangerous in Kyle Daukaus. I think they're both like one more big win away from someone in the top 15 of the middleweight division. So I'll do this fight, Daukaus, Gastelum, get it on some sort of like fight night main card in like a crowded place to build Kyle Daukaus. And if Kyle Daukaus can go out there and finish Kelvin Gastelum, that's going to be massive for him. And like I said, it's going to have to be someone in the top 15 at middleweight next, which I never thought I'd say about Kyle Daukaus. I thought this guy was going to be one of those regional warriors where he dominates the regional scene and looks bad in the UFC, but so far he's killing it. So I'd give him Kelvin Gastelum. He's coming off a win. He's a big name, big guy as well. So get that fight done. And then for Pat Sabatini, pretty much dominates and smudges Chepe Mariscal to a decision. One of those dominant grapplers in the featherweight division right now. I do Pat Sabatini versus Josh Emmett. I think this is a fair step up for Sabatini. Sabatini's on a 3-fight winning streak. His only 2 losses in the UFC was a bit of a fluky loss to Damon Jackson back in 2022 and Diego Lopez with no shame in that. Apart from that, he's won a shit ton of times in the UFC, and like I said, he's put together 3 straight wins. I think someone in the top 15 is fair next for Pat Sabatini. So I'll be giving someone in the top 15. And Josh Emmett, he's lost 4 of his last 5 fights. He's on a 2-fight losing streak. Lost to Lerone Murphy in a main event this year and just got out grappled and submitted in a minute by Yusuf Zalal. So I think it's the perfect fight. If Sabatini wins, he's facing a guy who we've just seen struggle with grappling in Josh Emmett. He's facing a guy who's fought for the interim belt before, and that's going to be a big win for Sabatini. He'll get into the top 10. He's one of these new guys in the featherweight division as well, and maybe like a matchup against like a Brian Ortega or Aljamain Sterling could be after that, which will be big for Sabatini. So I think if he does beat Josh Emmett, you know, there's a lot of big matchups for him at 145, and if Emmett can beat Sabatini, it's likely going to be by some fucking clubbing shot. And to be fair to Emmett, Sabatini is like a much easier version of Yusuf Zalal. His striking isn't as good. He's a lot more hittable. I don't think his submission game is as good as well, so it's like an easier version of Yusuf Zalal for Josh Emmett. So it's a fairly even fight. Either Sabatini smudges Emmett to a decision or Emmett clubs him with a massive shot, but either way, I think it needs to happen. Josh Emmett needs to fight outside the rankings. I think Sabatini's earned someone in the top 15. Sabatini, Emmett, get the fight done. And then for Ethan Ewing, probably going to be one of the best rookies of the year. Comes in on, I think, 4 days' notice against one of the best prospects in the UFC. Beats Malcolm Wellmaker. And not only did he beat him, he absorbed all of the hype as well. So I think for Ethan Ewing, I think there's a banger matchup you can do in the bantamweight division. And it's Adrian Yanez. This would be such a fire fight. I think whoever won this fight between Ewing and Malcolm Wellmaker would have made a good fight out of Adrian Yanez, but even after seeing Ethan Ewing's performance, I think this would be sick because that was one of the best prelim fights there were. He brought the fight to Malcolm Wellmaker, always in his face, good 3-round pace, bit of a scrappy style on the feet, and like I said, he made it a dirty fight against Malcolm Wellmaker, and he made it work. And after that performance, man, I mean, I'm surprised he didn't get 50k as well for the fact that he stepped up on short notice. He really brought the fight to Malcolm Wellmaker. In terms of Adrian Yanez, I mean, he's obviously a bit of a former prospect now, but he was once on the rise as well. One of the best offensive boxers unranked in the bantamweight division. The guy's got crazy hands, very hittable, always in scraps, and if he's not in a scrap, he's either getting knocked out or he's knocking somebody out as well. So I think Adrian Yanez versus Ethan Ewing would be an absolute banger of a fight. It's like a guaranteed banger. There's no way it ain't a boring fight. It's either Yanez going to be chinning Ewing or Ewing forcing Adrian Yanez into a dogfight. And if Ethan Ewing can beat Yanez as well, that's 2 really solid wins for his first 2 fights in the UFC. And after that, I'd honestly say Ethan Ewing deserves someone in the top 15 of the bantamweight division because he looked that good against Malcolm Wellmaker. So I think just for the fact that this would be such a fucking scrap, Yanez, Ewing, get the fight done. I don't think they should have to wait too long as well. I don't think Ewing took that much damage over Malcolm Wellmaker, and Yanez was supposed to fight, I think, last week, but his opponent pulled out, so they both should probably fit a similar time frame. So 2026 on some sort of pay-per-view, definitely not main card, but like pay-per-view prelim, Adrian Yanez, Ethan Ewing, banger of a fight, get it done. And then for Erin Blankfield, one of the top contenders in the flyweight division, submits Tracy Cortez as I expected. If you look at the state of the flyweight division right now, we've just had Shevchenko beat Zhang Weili. I think it's without a doubt that Natalia Silva should be, well, not the title eliminator, but she should be next for the belt. It should be Natalia Silva next fighting Shevchenko. So for Erin Blankfield, I'd probably do her against the winner of Macy Barber and Karine Silva. Barber and Karine Silva, they're both on, quite some decent winning streaks. They've not really lost to too many people in the top 5. I think whoever wins that fight he's probably going to be chucked into a title eliminator. And I think whoever, like I said, wins that fight, I think the winner gets a title eliminator between whoever wins between Silva and Barber and Erin Blackfield. If Macy Barber can beat Karine Silva, she undeniably needs to get a #1 contender. And there's a bit of bad blood between Blackfield and Barber as well because of the fight that was supposed to happen this year. And if Karine Silva can beat Macy Barber, Silva versus Blackfield is a title eliminator, I think makes sense. Like I said, I don't think Blackfield deserves a title shot yet. She did lose to Fiora a couple of fights ago, and Natalia Silva's the #1 contender. So I do Blackfield versus whoever wins between Natalia Silva and Macy Barber in a title eliminator. Maybe even like a fight night main event as well, because the UFC love putting Erin Blackfield in like fight night main events. So maybe that would be their kind of move. But yeah, Blackfield, winner of Silva and Barber, get that done. And then for Gregory Rodriguez, Violent Obama beats Roman Kopylov, gets the decision win. I want to see Greg Rodriguez against Shara Magomedov. I think this would be such a fucking crisp fight for the middleweight division. This would be a banger of a fight, and that's kind of what I want to do with Robocop. I don't want him to go against the thing about Robocop is no matter who you put him against, he always makes a fun fight out of it. We saw it against Christy Leroy Duncan, we saw it against Jared Cannonier, we just saw it against Roman Kopylov, we saw it against Jack Hermansson. Again, this is one of those fights where there's no way it's a boring fight. You've got the most powerful dude in the middleweight division, the guy who just clubs people, massive for the middleweight division, one of the most dangerous punchers in this division in Roman Kopylov, who just tags people apart, walks forward and clubs people with his massive fucking right hand, and he makes a fun fight out of it, usually in banger fights. And then you've got Shara Magomedov, one of the most dynamic kickers in the middleweight division, one of the funnest kickboxers to watch in the entirety of the middleweight division. Just got that really good win over Andre Barriol, and has a case to say that he's the best unranked striker in the middleweight division. I see him as like a better version of Roman Kopylov, higher volume, funner, better gas tank, better kicker. So I think Rodriguez versus Shah Magomedov, it's just one of those fights that you can do that's like an absolute banger. There's no doubt that the UFC is probably going to go to like Abu Dhabi in the first couple of months of 2026, and I think a perfect fight for Abu Dhabi would be Shah Magomedov versus Gregory Rodriguez. So I'd get that fight done, probably in like some sort of fight night main card, and I think the winner of this fight can get someone in the top 15 of the middleweight division. One thing I like about middleweight now is there's so many names coming up that deserve someone in the top 15. Like I just said, we've got Kyle Dorcas, we've got Christy Leroy Duncan with his win last week, and obviously whoever wins this fight as well, if this fight does happen. I think there's so many names at middleweight right now who deserve somebody in the top 15. So I do Robocop versus Shah Magomedov. It's going to be a banger, probably doesn't go the distance, and the winner of on top of that can get a big fight in the top 15 of the middleweight division. So Robocop, Magomedov, get it done. And then for Bo Nickel, a bit of his hype might have come back as he absolutely bullies Rodolfo Vieira and gets one of the best head kick knockouts of the year to put it on top. And I know people don't really like Bo Nickel, but you've got to respect that performance. It was near enough flawless, man. Bullied him on the feet, fucking slammed him as well in the first minute of the fight, and then gets the cherry on top with the head kick knockout. I would love to see Bo Nickel against Jung Young Park. This is, I think, the perfect fight to kind of test the level of Bo Nickel, because he obviously lost to Reinier de Ridder in brutal fashion. He's just shown that he's above the level astronomically of Rodolfo Vieira. I feel like Jung Young Park is like the perfect opponent to test how good Bo Nickel is. Is he worthy of a top 15 guy? Is he always going to stay unranked? This is the fight to test it, in my opinion. He just brutalized Rodolfo Vieira. It was a mismatch. He doesn't deserve someone in the top 15 just yet. You know, last fight he got bullied by Reinier de Ridder. Doesn't deserve someone in the top 15. And I put him against Jung Young Park. Jung Young Park's a fucking grinder, man. I always see him as like a bit of a bad version of Fluffy Hernandez. He's just grinding people out, really kind of control wrestling style, always in your face, always trying to grind you out. He did just lose to Ikram Aliskerov, but he made a good fight out of it as well. This is the perfect fight to test Bo Nickel, because if Bo Nickel could go out there and perform just like he did against Rodolfo Vieira against Jung Young Park, that's a massive win for Bo Nickel. And I think after that, there is a case to say that he deserves another chance at the top 15. And if Jung Young Park can beat Bo Nickel, then it kind of shows us that Bo Nickel's probably not going to be ready for the top 15, maybe ever, because maybe he's just not built for MMA. And that Jung Young Park is, well, I mean, he's obviously very talented. So perfect fight to test Bo Nickel. There's no need to rush him. We tried rushing him at the first time. He lost to Reinier de Ridder. He's just bullied Rodolfo Vieira. Let him get his experience up. Let's give him Jung Young Park, another good grappler, a tougher matchup. Let's see how he does. And then for Beneil Dariush, gets chinned by Benoit Saint-Denis in 16 seconds. Death, taxes, and Beneil Dariush getting chinned are all things that are guaranteed in life. At this point, I just want to see Dariush retire, man. I feel like there's nothing really in the game anymore for Dariush. He's never going to be a top contender. He's not really an entertaining fighter anyway these days as well. I think his last good run was back in like 2022. So I think for Dariush, retirement should be an option. He's been chinned by Oliveira, Arman Sarukian, and Beneil Dariush in 3 of his last 4 fights. He's probably not going to be back until like mid-2026 anyway. There's just nothing in it for Dariush. Retire, save yourself, because the chances are, unless you get booked against like a Grant Dawson, you're going to get knocked out again. And like I said, he's not going to become a top contender. His best days are behind him. His prime was about 3 years ago now. Dariush, save yourself, go and become an MMA coach, retire from the sport. And then for Benoit Saint-Denis, originally I was going to do Saint-Denis versus Gamrot because I thought that would be a massive fight. But I'm going to be honest, I think there's a much better fight for Benoit Saint-Denis. And I think some people might disagree with this. But it's Benoit Saint-Denis versus Justin Gaethje. I think this should be the fight you make at 155. I think if Topuria is going to stay at 155, which I think he should because he's got work to do, he should fight Pimblett. Not that Pimblett's this intriguing contender, but if I have to pick between Pimblett and Justin Gaethje, if it's a case of pick your poison, I think Pimblett's got more for it than Justin Gaethje. Or obviously the winner of Sarukian and Hooker, depending on how long Topuria wants to take out. So I think for Topuria, there's much better options than Gaethje anyway. And he called out the winner of the BMF belt, did Benoit Saint-Denis. I think Holloway versus Oliveira should be the fight next to the BMF belt. I think every MMA fan can agree. And considering that Benoit Saint-Denis is just chin Dariush, this would be such a banger, man. Can you imagine like a 5-round main event for a fight night? Benoit Saint-Denis versus Justin Gaethje for a title eliminator. That's one of the best fights you can make in MMA, and I think Saint-Denis has earned it. He's on a 3-fight win streak. He beat Kyle Prabelek easily. He shut down one of the best prospects in the lightweight division in Mauricio Hufe. He just slept Dariush in 16 seconds. Let's give him the opportunity to fight Justin Gaethje in a title eliminator. Gaethje keeps saying he wants a title fight. I'm sorry, you can't just sit out and beat Faziev and call for a title fight. You have not deserved it. I think if anybody's going to get the next title shot, it should be Paddy Pimblett. If Topuria wants to wait a bit longer, he can fight the winner of Arman Sarukian and Dan Hooker. But regardless, it's not going to be Justin Gaethje. It shouldn't be Justin Gaethje. I think Holloway versus Oliveira should happen. And therefore, if Benoit Saint-Denis is going to get someone in the top 5, no MMA fan is going to complain about this matchup apart from maybe Gaethje himself because he wants a title shot. But regardless, it'd be a banger of a fight. It's a pretty 50-50 fight. No way it goes the distance, and if it does, it's going to be one of the greatest fights of all time. And it determines another contender to potentially face Topuria at 155. So, Gaethje, Saint-Denis, get the fight done. One of the best fights you can make in MMA right now. It makes sense. Top fight, title eliminator for 155. Get it done. And then for Leon Edwards, definitely not in the best form of his career. Just got chinned brutally by Carlos Prates. I think Neil Magny is the level we're talking at for Leon Edwards. I genuinely think we need to start talking about Edwards versus Magny, which is a bit depressing. He's on a losing streak. He got dominated by Bilal Muhammad, submitted and mauled by Brady, and now he's been shinned by Prates. He's literally had the worst of all worlds. He's been decision dominantly, submitted dominantly, knocked out dominantly. He needs to fight down, and I think for Leon Edwards, he needs to stay away from these up-and-coming killers at 170. And like I said, he's just been shinned by Prates. And it's the fact that Leon's become a champion, and now we're talking about him potentially facing the likes of Neil Magny. There was discussions of potentially Edwards versus Makhachev, or even Edwards moving to 185 a few years back, and now we're talking about maybe a Magny main event in the Apex. He's had such a massive fall off in such a short amount of time, but I think this is reasonable. I'd obviously favour Edwards to beat Neil Magny, but I think he's at a similar level to Magny, man. It wouldn't honestly surprise me if Edwards was to like dominate 3 rounds of this fight, and then Magny pulls off a finish out of nowhere, because that's the type of guy that Magny is. But fuck it, if Edwards wants to continue fighting, if he wants to get his confidence back, Apex main event, Leon Edwards versus Neil Magny. It is depressing for the downfall of Leon Edwards, but it's like one of the only winnable fights, borderline top 15 for the welterweight division. He's not fighting a killer, he's not fighting a monster, but he's still fighting a guy who, like I said, he's always floating around that top 15, one of the better veterans in the UFC. He can, win on his worst day and lose on his best day. Edwards versus Magny, let's get the fight done. And I can guarantee this, Edwards ain't finishing Magny as well. It's probably going to go to a decision as well. I'm genuinely confident you could give Edwards nearly everybody on anybody in the roster, no matter the level, and he'll still find a way to take them to a decision. So 5-round main event in the Apex, Leon Edwards, Neil Magny, get the fight done. This is the level that Leon Edwards is at nowadays. If he can go out there and get a really good win over Magny, good for him. He's still not going to put him anywhere near title contention, but he's still got, he's back in the winning column. But if he goes out there and loses to Magny or looks poor against Magny, that's the perfect indicator that you need to get out the sport and retire, man. He's won the belt. He's had a good career. I think we're talking about him being on the level of Magny now. Get that fight done. And then for Carlos Prates, one of the best fights you can make in the entirety of the UFC right now would be Carlos Prates versus Michael Morales. I want to see this fight so fucking bad. Imagine this as like a title eliminator for 170. They're so evenly matched. They both competed on the card. this will be a banger, man. You've got the most prolific puncher in the welterweight division in Carlos Prates, the most powerful guy, I'd say top 2 hardest hitters in the entire sport, pound for pound. He's got that touch of death. He's knocked out Leon Edwards, he's knocked out Jeff Neal, he's knocked out nearly everybody. He's one of the hardest hitting dudes in this division. He just got a good win on that card. And you put him against Marco Morales, who's on a 3-fight winning streak, again, all by KO, just knocked out one of the top guys in Sean Brady, one of the most powerful guys in this division as well, behemoth as well, massive for 170 as well. This is such an evenly made fight, and I think the winner gets a title fight. Can you imagine, like a fight night main event? The promo for this fight, they both competed on 322, they both scored knockouts over top contenders, they're both the hardest hitters and the most powerful strikers in the entirety of the welterweight division, they're both in a position where they can fight for the belt, they're both one more big win away from a title shot. Carlos Prates, Marco Morales in a 5-round main event in some sort of crowded arena would be such a good fight, man. And the winner can face, the winner could get a title shot in the welterweight division. I'll talk about who Makhachev should fight later on, but Prates versus Morales, I don't want to miss out on an opportunity for this fight to happen. It's just violence, man. It ain't going the distance. I honestly couldn't tell you who gets knocked out, because on one hand, Prates hits like a truck, and it seems like whenever he connects flush, he knocks everybody out. But you've got Morales, who's like a beast at 170, looks 185, and again, seems to be a behemoth with a bunch of power where the second he lands flush, he's knocking people out. Prates versus Morales, one of the best fights you can make in MMA right now. One of the best, probably the best title eliminator you can make in MMA right now. 2 knockout artists. One of them gets a title shot if they win. Prates, Morales, don't miss out on this opportunity. Make that fight. And then 4, Zhang Weili gets dominated by Shevchenko moving up a weight class. I do Zhang Weili against Mackenzie Dern. I think this is just a fair matchup for Zhang Weili. She's just not built for 125. I think it's that last night it proved that as good as Zhang Weili is for 115, she's very small for 125, and she got completely dominated. But I think Mackenzie Dern makes sense. Mackenzie Dern's the strawweight champion. She hasn't faced Zhang Weili yet. It's one of the only top contenders. I mean, she's a champion now. It's one of the only guys one of the only women at 125 or 115 that Zhang Weili hasn't fought and dominated. So I think, yeah, just go back to 115. She definitely earns a title shot. She never really lost the belt. She vacated it to chase greatness. She fell short. Let Zhang Weili get a title shot. It's still semi-intriguing in the sense that Mackenzie Dern's managed to become a champion, and again, Zhang Weili's never faced Mackenzie Dern. But yeah, Zhang Weili, give her a title fight at 115. She is still kind of the champion, the lineal champion of that division anyway. Weili, Mackenzie Dern, I think, yeah, it goes without saying it makes sense. And then for Valentina Shevchenko, pulls off one of the most boring, but at least one of the most dominant fights of her career. Definitely got to make an argument to be one of the greatest, or potentially the greatest women MMA fighter of all time. I think it's going to be Valentina Shevchenko versus Natalia Silva next. This has to be it for Valentina Shevchenko. There's not really any other option. I think Natalia Silva's earned a shot. Natalia Silva's the last hope at flyweight for beating Valentina Shevchenko. Joe Rogan was saying in not going to interview that there's not really any top contenders, which just proves how much of a fucking casual he is, because if you watch the sport, you'll know that Natalia Silva is a clear-cut #1 contender. She's undefeated in the UFC. She's on this massive winning streak. She's beat 4 ranked fighters now. Let's give her a title fight. She just had her most dominant win over Alexa Grasso too, and I think she presents a new style. I think she's probably got better striking than Shevchenko. She's got one of the most fun, entertaining striking styles in the strawweight division, flyweight division. Really good taekwondo, really good kickboxing, very high volume as well. She's got serious striking. There's Natalia Silva, and I want to see her in there with Valentina Shevchenko. I'd pick Shevchenko to win just because she's that good, but it's like, not only is it a top contender, it's a winnable fight for Natalia Silva, so get this fight done. Silva versus Shevchenko. Let's see how Shevchenko does it. If Shevchenko beats Natalia Silva, then I think it gets to the point where Shevchenko should just retire and ride off into greatness, or maybe even chase a battle at 135 between the runner of Kayla Harrison and Amanda Nunes. But if Natalia Silva can beat Shevchenko, that's going to be massive for Silva, and I'm a fan of Natalia Silva. Seems like a likable person, fun personality, and obviously her fighting style is one of the more entertaining fighting styles, which is kind of what we need now at flyweight. So Shevchenko, Silva, get it done. And then for Jack Della Maddalena, gets utterly dominated by Islam Makhachev. If we are going to, give him his props, he had a really good submission defense, did JDM, but he was completely off a beat. Just the same thing every round. Taken down by Makhachev and controlled, and he couldn't do anything about it. For JDM, I think a really good fight you can make, maybe for the Perth card next year as like a featured fight, is JDM versus Sean Brady. The two guys who had a bit of a bad night at UFC 322, with Jack getting dominated by Makhachev, Brady getting knocked out by Morales. I feel like this is a good fight to make, because, to be fair, I can still see this being a fun fight. JDM, I know we just got dominated by Makhachev, but still kind of historically been a really good boxer, really good scrapper guy on the feet. Also has really good takedown defense, even though he just losing to Makhachev doesn't really, show that you've got bad takedown defense. And obviously, Sean Brady, still one of the better grapplers at 170. Just had to face the behemoth of Michael Morales, but still one of the better grapplers in this division. So it's a classic striker versus grappler. Brady's not having to face a striker as dangerous as Morales. JDM's not having to face a grappler as dangerous as Makhachev. They're both fairly evenly matched. I think it's a fairly 50-50 fight on paper as well, so in Perth next year, maybe that's too soon, maybe you do it a bit later on, but either way, like a fight night main event, let's do that. JDM, Sean Brady, really good fight that makes sense. Two top guys in the top 5 of the welterweight division, fairly evenly matched. I'd get that fight done. And then for Islam Makhachev. Now, here's the thing about Makhachev. There's like 5 different names you can give to Islam Makhachev right now. There's no right or wrong answer. And I actually think it depends on who wins next week between Ian Gary and Bilal Muhammad. I think if Ian Gary wins next week, you might not like this. I think Makhachev versus Ian Gary makes sense. I already know there's going to be a lot of people button smashing, but you've got to hear me out with this matchup. Makhachev versus Gary makes more sense at 170 right now, because Gary's the most deserving contender. He's beat Carlos Prates, who's like the top guy, one of the top guys right now in welterweight. If he beats Bilal Muhammad as well, the former champion, he's also got out there and beating MVP, beating Neil Magny, beating Jeff Neal. He took Shavkat to his first decision. So I think if Gary can beat Bilal Muhammad, man, look, everyone's saying as well how good is Ian Gary. The whole narrative after this card is how good Ian Gary is. And I think he's got one of the better cases for a guy to beat Makhachev in this division. Obviously, I'm going to pick Makhachev to beat Ian Gary, but he is the most deserving contender. If he beats Bilal Muhammad, there's no more deserving contender in this division than Ian Gary. And he's been calling for his shot. He'd sell the fight as well. It's that classic Ireland versus Dagestan rivalry as well. Ian Gary would sell the fight. I think he'd make a really good fight out of Makhachev, because one thing I will give Gary credit for is he always has good game plans. When he's facing a dangerous striker like Prates or MVP, he'll manage to nullify them. When he's facing a dangerous grappler like Shavkat Rakhmonov, he'll manage to nullify them. So I think I'm really interested in this fight, man. Gary versus Makhachev. I know a lot of people want to see other fights, but I think if Ian Gary can go out there and have an impressive win over Bilal Muhammad, even potentially finish him, I think Gary's got a really good case to say that he deserves a title fight, man. So I'd do Makhachev versus Gary, Ireland versus Dagestan. It makes sense. Now, if Bilal Muhammad beats Ian Gary, which doesn't really have a high chance of happening, but if that does happen, it can't be Topuria next because he's got work at 155. It can't be Shavkat because he's inactive. It can't be Usman because obvious reasons. I'd do Morales. I think if Bilal Muhammad wins next week, Morales makes sense, because Morales is probably the second most deserving contender. He's on this big Willie streak. He's a human highlight reel, one of the hardest hitters in the sport. So I think if Bilal Muhammad does manage to beat Ian Gary, I think then you can do Michael Morales versus Makhachev. And again, it's an entertaining fight. You've got this hard-hitting big dude in Michael Morales who's also got really good wrestling against Makhachev. So I think that would be the fight that I'll make. But I think if Ian Gary wins next week, Ian Gary versus Makhachev would be the fight to make at 170. But let me know your thoughts on these fights. Do you agree? Do you disagree? I assume I'm going to have quite a few disagreements on the main event, but let me know your thought process. Thank you for watching.